Word of God that stands with the word. I bow down before your holy temple and give thanks for your spirit, love, and your grace. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for protecting us during these troublous times. We know that things seem to be in disarray right now, but this I do know. You are still out there, and we love you. Yes. And we're going to keep our eye on the prize, Father, because I know that whatever we're going through is for our good. And for our good, it's for your good. This is great, matchless, glorious, holy name. Amen. Amen.
Let's give it time, church. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. We have a couple of ways that you can participate. If you would like to use PayPal, you can go to www.grcc.org/giving. For bill pay, you can contact your bank. For Cash App, $GUCC 2500. If you have a check, you can mail it directly to the church. And for Zelle, revc10@grucc.org. Father God, we thank you for these gifts. Thank you for those who gave, those who are unable to but have in their heart to give. We ask that you multiply these gifts and these numbers you see fit for your kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
15, and I was wondering if she sent the text message to the right person. Because I had been teaching for about 4 or 5 years at that point, but I was just, I was teaching. I wasn't speaking. So I wasn't sure what she was talking about. And it took me about 4 months, and I eventually said, yeah, I guess. And lo and behold, that same year, I dealt with something that pushed me completely out of my comfort zone dealing with a hate crime. And it was just like, I felt like I would be completely selfish if I had something to say that helped me get through something. I didn't tell somebody else about it, because that's what God does, right? And what's ironic about that is today I'm speaking about a brother who never held his tongue when I'm talking about Malcolm X. And I think that at this point in time in history, we need to have that same spirit that spoke through him, that told him, and although of a different belief system, spoke some truth that is applicable to all of us as human beings. And when I look at this verse, and I want us to revisit this real quick, Proverbs chapter 18, verse 2 through 7 and 20 and 21. Starting with verse 2, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. I want y'all to just think about the last 5 years, or maybe just the last decade period. And I want us to remember and just think that, and something I tell my students all the time, y'all, when I'm speaking in public, that we have been made to believe that things got better in 1968. We have been taught to believe that things got better when the man who stood on the highest plateau for us was assassinated. And the hypocrisy in that, it cannot be stated enough. You're telling me that we progressed at a point in time where y'all assassinated a man that stood up for us, and then the next decade, a group that came out of that movement, the Black Panthers, who fed us, the reason why we have free food in school, not the government, they started that first. You destroyed that group, but yet things got better in 1968. See, again, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. Some of these fools had to get banned from social media. And other people who spoke from the highest plateau against them as well got banned for speaking the truth. I'm glad I got my timer right here, y'all, because I already feel it. When wickedness comes, so does contempt. and with shame comes reproach. The words of the mouth are deep waters, but the fountain of wisdom is a rushing stream. It is not good to be partial to the wicked and so deprive the innocent of justice. I'm not saying this. This is God's word right here. It is not good to be partial to the wicked and so deprive the innocent of justice. What is our experience here in America? What is the experience that we've had time and time again? What is the experience that we see of people in Palestine right now? Being impartial. We're saying, well, maybe we should be kind of nice to them. Well, we can't be too mean. We can't tell them how it really is. Whether you tell them how it really is or not, it don't matter, because we still going to deal with the reality of how they really felt it was and how they treated us before. The lips of fools bring them strife, and their mouths invite a beating. The mouths of fools are their own undoing, and their lips are a snare to their very lives. Going to 20. From the fruit of their mouth, a person's stomach is filled. With the harvest of their lips, they are satisfied. Are we speaking things that are fruitful? Are we fruitful in ourselves? Meaning, are we giving something that can be multiplied and can nourish and feed people? The tongue has the power of life and death. Don't forget that part right there. The power of life and death. How many people have died? How many lives have been destroyed by the lies that people have said from the highest office in the land, time and time again, with utter disregard for our lives, because we thought that things got better in 1968. And some people were a little bit nicer in how they explained racism, by talking about people in poverty or people in the projects, or talking about people who are thugs and so-called criminals. But then we had somebody in the last president that came out and told you how it was, and by the time we picked up on the game, it was a little bit too late. So we thought. The power of life and death. And those who love it will eat its fruit. Sometimes it could be fruitful, healthy for us, fresh fruit. Sometimes it could be spoiled. You know, when I go to the grocery store, now I love this place around us called Fresh Time. And they got these amazing Honey Crisp apples. Anybody? Because Honey Crisp apples to me are the greatest. But when I grab the bag of Honey Crisp apples, I have to do a double check. I got to look around. I got to kind of pick them up like this, because sometimes they leave the apples out there a little too long. There might be some mold on the thing, might be spoiled. Because if I take it home and bite into it, don't pay attention, that's the power of life and death to me right there in that moment. See, when we speak something, as people who are made in the image of God, we have the free will to choose what we want to say and speak. But when God says something, it's life. And here's the thing we have to understand about God. God does not speak our language. God speaks every language. The languages come from God. Sometimes we don't even speak languages and we communicate. We look, we know how we do. I see you in the street, what's good? We head nodding. Communication, how you reacted in the situation, how your body gets tense. So when God was speaking, I'm sure it wasn't in Old English, one of the newest languages in the world. But think of the times God spoke, and we're talking Genesis now. Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. Verse 6, and God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. Verse 9, and God said, let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear. Verse 11, then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. And it was so. I'm sure he wasn't speaking English, not even Spanish. But it was so. It was communicated from the metaphysical to the physical, and it became. There was nobody here stepping on the fruit, poisoning the fruit. It was there. Verse 14 and 15, and God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. Verse 20 and 22, and God said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, be fruitful Multiply. 24, and God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. This is all before us. We're not even here yet. But God is laying the foundation for us. He's speaking in the metaphysical to the physical. 26 through 28. God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Every word that God spoke, and again, I'm using spoke in quotations, there was an action that followed it that made it true. Now, it didn't just boop. It was over time. It happened. It became a fact. It became a law of nature. But we live in a time in which we who were made in his image have decided to use our tongue to create things that go against the laws that God has created. When you create things that go against the laws that God has created, you can't last. You tremble. You fall. You crumble. Look at the state of the world right now. Look at the state of America. We know what's going on. We've experienced it in every single generation. I sit in work meetings sometimes and I'm thinking, y'all just realized this? Can I get an amen, church? Y'all just realized America was racist. Y'all just realized we had these problems. My mom told me, my dad, my grandmother, my granddad, their parents. But now we see we got to do something about this. When George Floyd happened, that was never our first time seeing that or experiencing that. But welcome. Sit down and take these lessons. As Dave Chappelle said, come get these lessons. But here's the thing, y'all. We understand that when God spoke, it was good. It was for the betterment of all mankind, the animals and everything. But again, we have the power of life and death. Sometimes we can speak things that are so evil that people believe them and inherit them. Like I want to fast forward from that beginning of time to a time that we can kind of relate to in the history books. January 1963, Alabama. Anybody got some family from Alabama? My first time driving through Alabama, y'all, I ain't gonna lie, I was scared. I was just thinking about all the things I had seen. We were coming back from a road trip from Florida, and we drove past a plantation. And I swear the plantation, it must have unlocked some type of historical memory in my body, because I started clenching. I got real tense. And I was like, I think I've seen this thing before. I think we need to hurry up and drive through here, because things ain't looking too good. Because when I see that, I'm conscious as a history teacher, y'all, that there was no line in the sand in history. I want you to really understand this, where we said as a nation that we have done bad things and we need to do better. Understand that there has never been a time when Obama was elected. I want you to Google this now or later. That was when they first apologized. When Obama was elected, 2008, that's when you realized something was wrong. 2008, slavery so-called in 1865. Dr. King was assassinated in 1968. 40 years later, you said, well, look, since we have a black person in office now, maybe we did something wrong to prevent this from happening a little bit sooner, because Obama wasn't the first qualified person. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Frederick Douglass was quite amazing. Harriet Tubman, I mean, come on now, right? So it took that long. So in Alabama, I'm going through that. I'm probably having a flashback to George Wallace speaking. Because what I can think of is in January 1963, Alabama elected this man, George Wallace, and this guy said, and I quote, because I don't want y'all to think I said this, let us rise to the call of freedom. Let me keep going, though. Loving blood that is in us, and send our answer to the tyranny that clinks its chains upon the South. In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth. I draw the line in the dust. So he drew his line right there. And tossed the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny. White people experience tyranny in America? This is what he said, though. And I say, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And they erupted. And they erupted in hands, in a round of applause, y'all. That's what he said. 1963. He was elected. There are people who voted for him in Alabama that are still around right now. And maybe they have changed. They could have changed. There are some who lived there and came up here to live. Maybe they could have changed. But I think that if we have never had a time when we have reckoned with it, then how can we say there has been a reason to change? Because the only time America really feels there's a need to change is when that bottom line is affected. Because of Montgomery bus boycott, they lost money. Okay, we'll let you sit on here now. See, we have been the force that has shown America that what you're doing is wrong. We're the mirror that shows you you're not doing this right. We are the reason there is a country, because when we move, everybody else gets theirs too. Because when we get the pie, we split it up and we give y'all some too. But understand that when he was saying that, there was also somebody else at the same time speaking. His name was Malcolm Little at one point. When he was assassinated, it was Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz. And Malcolm had a lot to say. Malcolm truly believed in speaking life. And sometimes it wasn't pretty, but it was real and it was true. Malcolm often said, you know what? I love my people so much that you mistake me for hating white people, and I don't hate anybody. Because I call out the evil, I call out the wrongdoings, you assume that I hate somebody. If you hit me in my face and I call it out, that does not mean that I hate you. It means that I'm calling out what you did, and I'm not going to let you get away with it again. The fact that we believe that that's hateful says a lot. It shows that most of us, and I'm talking all groups of people, have been taught to live a lie. Because we can take Dr. King and we can only have an excerpt from a speech in 1963 that he came up with really that moment and say that's all he stood for. Because what we can also do then is say, well, look, he was all about a dream and not judging people about the tone of their skin. And then somebody who agrees with George Wallace can flip that into meaning something that supports them. And then they can say Malcolm X, who if you can't really take any of Malcolm's speeches out of context, really. So they have to just say all of it is evil. He's bad. See, I'm often, like, I'll sometimes speak and then people will ask me, like, well, what do you think about how America has progressed? And I say, for one, we have to be very specific. When you say America, who do you mean? Because there are a lot of different groups of people in this country. America is not monolithic. America is not like a European or African or Asian nation where you can say there's just one group of people there. As far as I'm concerned, black people have not had anything to progress towards. Because when I think about myself historically and I study beyond slavery, I understand that people went to Africa to study. People went to Africa to learn. People went to Africa to become better people all across the world. So if you take me from that position and then enslave me, because I was never a slave, I was enslaved, then what am I progressing towards? I'm just trying to escape, y'all. That's all it is. Now, if you're asking me, has the white populace, or those who are white who have adopted the mindset of racism, have they progressed? And I would say, again, what do you mean by progress? Because Malcolm said, if you stick a knife in my back 9 inches, you pull it out 6, it's not progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made. They haven't pulled the knife out. They won't even admit it was there, end quote. They won't even admit it was there. They don't want your kids to learn that racism exists in America still. You know, y'all, one of the best things I've done in the last month and a half for my personal career is, I would say for everybody too, because it's revealing some things. I got on TikTok, y'all, and I never thought I would get on TikTok, because my impression of TikTok was you get on there and you dance to songs, and I'm like, that's just not my thing. I'm not about to get on there dancing and being, I'm just not, I'm a funny guy when you get to know me, but just not like on the internet. You got to get to know me. So I got on TikTok and I was like, let me just do this, because I saw somebody make history videos one day. So I made a history video about Ida B. Wells. And the title of it was Ida B. Wells was a G, because she was. And I talked about how she stood up and how she fled Memphis because they were trying to kill her because she spoke. That's all she did. She spoke. Black woman, y'all, look, when y'all say something, they get scared. She spoke. I'm saying, I know Malcolm was my guy, but when black women speak, she spoke. She ain't gonna burn down nothing. She published a newspaper and said, "You will not lynch us again." And she fled and took all of us with her and came to Chicago. The video did pretty good. So I kept posting videos, and I posted a video called this lady named Polly. It said Polly was a G. Because Polly, she was free. She lived in a place called, at the time it was called Africa, Ohio, right on the border between Ohio and Kentucky, right? Because Kentucky was slave territory. And she had a whole bunch of land, right? And when she was free, she would notice that after 1850, at that point, anybody who was white could capture a black person and sell them into slavery, the Fugitive Slave Act. Now, what that meant was, even if you were never previously enslaved, you can be sold. Did not matter. You just black, you're guilty. That sounds familiar, right? 1850. So she noticed that some of the white folks that helped her, because there were white folks on the Underground Railroad that assisted, she noticed that there were some white folks who never actually did that, and what they were doing was tricking people and then actually selling them back. Something she did was she started to carry a butcher knife with her. And don't ask me how she did the next thing, because I don't know. But then she also carried boiling water with her. That's what the story said. I don't know how. Those pots, though. I know my water, this can keep some stuff cold for a long time. So I'm just saying, well, I don't think we just discovered this technology now. So she would dress like an older woman. And when she would see these things happen, she had like a big coat on her, and she would stab them. She would fight back, stabbing them. Or if she had the water, it would still, bam, throw it on them. And when I posted that video, it took off. I'm just like, this is just history. Now, mind you, I just learned it about 2 months ago myself. So I think the initial shock was that nobody had actually learned this before, and there was shock in that. But when I was going through the comments, I'm at a point now, y'all, if you know my story, I've seen so many hateful things. Sometimes it don't really even bother me no more. I just kind of laugh at it. So I see some of these comments, and I'm like, people are really mad that I'm just, oh, that was a long time ago. Oh, that was... Okay, and so was the 4th of July. You celebrate it every year. So we're going to talk about it. So I'll show stories like that, and I see people in there talking about, well, blah, 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 racism doesn't exist. And I'll post a story about a lynching that happened in 1915. A black man, Anthony Crawford, got his land taken, his land stolen, 50, 60-something acres. He went to town and said, look, I'm going to sell these cotton seeds. They tried to rip him off. He said, give me my dang, and he didn't say dang, money back. And the audacity of you is what they said. They lynched him. His family fled, did not get the land back. Guess where they fled? To Evanston. I'll post that. Oh, that was a long time ago. Why are you bringing up old stuff? I don't treat you like that. I got black friends. These are all in the comment section. So we'll think that, people understand that racism is a problem, especially after last year, but you will be sadly mistaken, y'all. You know how it is on some of these YouTube, Facebook comments, right? People think that we have progressed because we have been taught the lie that things got better. The civil rights movement was the last chapter. No, y'all, it's a continuation. It's one part of the story. If you cannot admit there's a problem, then we can't solve it. And where do we as black folks go to for help? And I think Malcolm would tell you that, look, if we're looking for somebody to save us, who's in office right now, 46 different presidents, we got to do it ourselves. Understand that when you see Lyndon Johnson signing something, it was because he was forced. When you saw Abraham Lincoln, and I hate even saying this, free the slaves, it was because Frederick Douglass forced them. It was because Harriet Tubman was doing something before that. It was because John Brown did something. It was because Nat Turner did something. Then Mark Vesey did something. Aunt Polly did something. Those in power would never give you a piece of that pie unless you demand it. And that's what we have done continuously. So the progress is really, y'all, we just reclaim. I tell kids, you don't need progress. Reclaim your crown. Reclaim what's inside. You just have to find it. There is nothing. You can't buy it on Amazon. Prime is everywhere, but you can't buy this. They ain't going to deliver it the same day. What Gil Scott-Heron say? The revolution won't be televised. It's not going to be there. It's inside of you. Do you realize what you've come from? I think sometimes I got to just remind people that you were chilling, minding your business. I was telling some kids the other day on Thursday, like, yo, they said Africa was starving when I was growing up. But what's interesting about that is in Africa, the climate is so warm and vegetative that you can plant stuff all year round. So how is it possible that they ain't got food to survive unless somebody came there and took it? Right? How are we broke but gold comes from there? How are we broke and diamonds from there and every woman in this country who gets married has one? And in Europe. So something ain't adding up. We've been taught wrong. Progress. When I think of progress, I drive through Naperville and I'm like, whoa, this is a huge church. How do you feel about black people though? I'm sorry, I just be thinking that. Because I see huge churches and I see people still starving. I drive past a brother every day on the way to work and I'm just like, for me, I know some of y'all are like this too, like it eats at me. His brother is sleeping outside of a former closed down restaurant, blankets all around him, some bottled water, some things maybe people have dropped off, and it just gets to me because we can have churches that, have hundreds and thousands of members, bringing in millions of dollars, and people are still starving. And cities will say, we don't need a shelter for them. We don't need to do this for them. My question really is, look, because I know the black church historically, that's the core of our culture here, of the revolution. But my question is, what is the white church doing? I was thinking about this the other day, because we can think historically there's so many black ministers that stand up and speak for us. Reverend Melody Seaton. Reverend Oz. Jeremiah Wright. Oldest Moss III. Oldest Moss Jr. We can go down. We can keep going. And I was thinking to myself one day, outside of Father Flager, what prominent white ministers do we have that speak up? That speak up to their white congregations. When I say white church, I mean it's in the white neighborhoods, mostly white people. And Father Flager is speaking in our community. So where is the equivalent of a Reverend Seaton? Where's the equivalent of a Ozzie Smith, Jeremiah Wright in Naperville? Where is that at? In Schaumburg, in a suburban area of New York, in Beverly Hills in California. Who's out there saying that white folks got to do better? I'm just wondering, because we've had to bring out the very best in us just to survive and just to be here. These men got assassinated at the age of 39 so that we can live and be here. There were ministers who were white marching with Dr. King. But as we stand right here, right now, I'm saying, where you at? What are you using? How you using your voice? Are you redistributing the wealth? Are you going to the other side of town that was segregated? Because George Wallace said segregation now, segregation forever. And understand, when they say that, they ain't just talking about get away from me. They saying keep your money, right? We gonna keep the resources segregated. You paying the same taxes, but your school don't look the same. We going to the same restaurant ordering the same thing, but your food look way different. What's the problem with that? And here's what I understand, y'all. Here's what I really want us to do some search, some deep meditation on. I think we feel, as black folks, that when we get to a certain level, we made it when we can move, right? I'm talking to somebody. We made it when we can move out the neighborhood, or we can go live with white folks, with another nationality, or we can get a bigger house. We've assumed that. At one point in my life, I assumed it too. But then you begin to think that, and that's just a part of our culture, we ain't free unless we all free. There's something deep down inside of us that we can't. Now, I ain't saying move where you want to move, but understand that the hood is still a hood and it still needs your attention. And it's something that you have that allowed you to persevere under the most unfortunate, despicable circumstances. And somebody needs you because guess what? You had somebody, because none of us did it alone. There is no such thing as doing it alone. Even if you can't name one person, you had God. And I know we laugh at people that go to the award shows and they've done made the most explicit foul music ever. I want to thank God who They being real though. Now they may not have fully manifested it positively, and they may in some ways be speaking death instead of life, but we all had somebody. Matter of fact, Malcolm said, I'm convinced that in order to translate this determination into a dynamic force and the cause of human progress, let me pause right there. He was educated in prison, right? Conditions of peace and security must be established and maintained. And by conditions of peace and security, we mean we have to eliminate the barking of the police dogs. We have to eliminate the police clubs. We have to eliminate the water hoses. We have to eliminate all of these things that have become so characteristic of the American so-called dream. These have to be eliminated. Then we will be living in a condition of peace and security. We can never have peace and security as long as one black man in this country is being bitten by a police dog. No one in the country has peace and security. End quote. He didn't just say us. He said no one, nobody, no nationality. No nationality has peace and security until we have peace and security. We have to think about that because the perception is that racism is a black problem. No, did not create it. We deal with the effects. We deal with the most obvious impacts of racism, but it's not our problem. We have to figure out how to move around it. We have to figure out how to be great in spite of. Any black success story, y'all, is a miracle. You understand? Like what, again, a miracle. Literally, every group that is over here chose to come. We didn't. And we made something of it. We made our own communities. We kept our stories alive. We passed on recipes. We passed on ways to persevere. God has done something great with us, and he ain't done yet because there's so much that needs to be revealed. You know the stories in the Bible. You know what the stories say. We will be used to show his glory and greatness, and we have been, and we will continue to be. But this country cannot fully be healed until the ancestors of those who have benefited from that oppression can realize that there is something that hurts deep down inside to understand that too. Because if a bank is robbed, yeah, it hurts if you stuck me up. You took all our money. My kid's going to suffer. I might not get that check. But deep down, you know giving that money to your kids ain't right. You know the pain that you caused that bank ain't right. You know everybody that was dealing with trauma and still dealing with trauma, you know it's not right. Because since that bank was never restored, every teller in there is on edge every time they walk in. They ready to press that button. They got that gun nearby. They probably got several because they don't know. And when you come in, they thinking you might be on the same thing. And you thinking, oh, this person is so aggressive. Oh, what's wrong with them? Why are they so tense? Why are they so loud? And then on the flip side, how do they still find a way to celebrate? How do they still have a song to sing? How is it that they created so many inventions in this country? How is it that they persevered to the highest office in the land? How is it that they created all of our culture? How is it that they wrote all of our songs? How is it that they did this? But it has to be rectified. See, and Malcolm wasn't just saying like, yo, everybody's impacted by this, but he was very firm. When he spoke it, it was like God told him that the law is this. It was like, no, it's not somewhat peace. It's not somewhat justice. It's not, okay, yeah, he was convicted. He should get life. Oh, well, he got 10. That's good enough. Malcolm is like all or nothing. Take it all the way out. Acknowledge it. Help heal it. Come back and nurture it. Make sure I'm good. Give me my resources. I shouldn't even have to pay for the health care I need to heal the wound. What's the mindset he had? What's the mindset that put him in that spot? Remember, Malcolm's father was killed by the Klan when he was 6 years old. His mother was taken from his home when he was 13. He was moving from house to house. He resorted to a life of crime, not because that was his destiny. That was because that was what society created. You know, I came across this quote. This quote said, look, if a flower is trembling, if a flower is not growing, you change the environment the flower's in. You don't say, what's wrong with you, flower? What's wrong with this rose? I keep giving the rose water. It just won't grow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You don't try to tape it up. You say, well, maybe it's not getting enough sunlight. Oh, I didn't actually put it in soil. That might be the problem right there. See, Malcolm grew up in a hostile environment. Father was killed at the age of 6. Well, lynched at the age of 6. Yet and still by middle school at a majority white school, he's the class president. He has straight A's. What you want to be when you grow up, Malcolm? I want to be a lawyer. Teacher said, no, you can't do that. It's no job for an N-word. What's crazier when you think about it is the fact that I wonder if that teacher knew that there have been black lawyers in America already. I wonder if that teacher knew that law was practiced in Africa, Timbuktu, West Africa. I wonder if that teacher knew that the number one commodity traded amongst cultures and tribes in Africa were books. 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 And now they say, if you want to hide something from us, put it in a book. And they said we were stupid, couldn't read. Did it ever occur to anybody that when we came over here, we weren't speaking English? So yeah, we couldn't read it. Maybe we spoke Arabic, maybe we spoke Yoruba, but we spoke something because language came from there first. Because when people came to Africa to learn, how did they communicate? Wow. So when Malcolm was speaking, he said, we want freedom by any means necessary. When God spoke that from the metaphysical, this is going to be what it is. Nothing you can do to interfere. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary. We don't feel that in 1964, 2021, living in a country that is supposedly based upon freedom and supposedly the leader of the free world, we don't think that we should have to sit around and wait for some segregationist, racist, congressman or president and senators and a president from Texas, where he from? New York, and Washington, D.C., to make up their minds that our people are due now some degree of civil rights. No, we want it now. Or we don't think anybody should have it. They don't want you to learn that in school. What you mean? Because the basis of American wealth is the denial of our freedom so that white, and not even just all whites, that's the trick right there, wealthy whites. Because poor whites have been disenfranchised on the class side. And what we don't realize is that white folks who are poor in the South, we're talking Alabama and Mississippi, the poverty rates are high. They outnumber us. They're impacted by it too, but they'll vote against their issues every single time to keep us down on this imaginary caste. If we don't have freedom, you don't either. Because you paranoid thinking every time that you turn your back that we're going to be waiting behind you ready to blow up something. We could have been done that. We in it for the long run. We know what God has put here, what God has ordained us with. We're teaching our kids certain things because these are values that are transferable to any part of life, physical and the metaphysical. Because my story wouldn't be possible anywhere else. Our story wouldn't be possible. We are an example to the world. When people are fighting for justice across the world, they go to the history books, they study us. They study what we did. Dr. King studied Gandhi. What were they studying? Us during the civil rights era of the 1800s. We've been fighting for this since the 1500s. And we still here. The perspective, being stolen, on slave. Can you imagine, for anybody that's been overseas, I have not yet, but when you flying over that ocean, millions didn't make it. Not thousands, millions. We talking millions in terms of Chicago's population. Millions in terms of New York and LA didn't make it. Some were thrown over. Some committed suicide. Just imagine. But something inside told your ancestor to keep going. Spirit of God spoke, keep going. And I can't imagine being in that situation. So what the other ancestors did, I get it. George decided to keep going. There's something being spoken. There's this illusion, y'all. The illusion of white privilege. And I feel I have to say this because I say an illusion because is there privilege in benefiting from slavery, racism, genocide? I feel as though the word in some ways it's a euphemism in some ways, or in some ways it desensitizes us to the reality of it. It's like when I teach my kids about what happened to the Japanese Americans here during World War II. They call them Japanese internment camps. Okay, yeah, those are concentration camps though. Now, they weren't sent there to be exterminated like Jews were, but concentration means a group of people who look the same concentrated in a certain area against their will. It's a concentration camp. It's just the purpose wasn't the same, but we say it differently. Oh, it was an internment camp. We say Columbus discovered America. Again, what does that really mean? Discovered it for who? Discovered it for racism, genocide. Discovered it for Western Europe because the Vikings had already come, and for some reason the Vikings didn't do what he did. So discovered it for who? Africans were here. We have documentation of that. Asians came to the West Coast. Discovered for who? There are stories that talk about how Mexicans during the Great Depression were sent back to Mexico to make jobs for white Americans. 60% were American citizens. You know what they called it? Mexican repatriation. 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 That sounds like deportation. But when you phrase it that way, it was something that needed to be done during that time. But we got to be real. What is the privilege? You robbed the bank, never had to pay up. Are you going to tell your kids that was a privilege? I don't want that privilege. I don't want a white privilege. I want equity. By any means necessary. I want my people to have everything that they deserve. The people that look like me, people that don't look like me. That's what God said. That's what God spoke through a Malcolm, spoke through a Martin, spoke through Harriet's feet. That was something that was already ordained. We see the imbalance. We see all this stuff going on because things have not been made right yet. But how did we get here? I've been touching on the surface, y'all, with education. How many of y'all, you could clap your hands or raise your hand, how many of you all learned about Malcolm in school? Okay. And I want you to think about how you learned about him. Now, I'm just speaking from my own experience. When I first started teaching, I would ask my students, what do you know about Malcolm? What do you know about Martin? Two most infamous people from that era. Dr. King had a dream, want us to be together, live in peace. Again, they're just touching the surface on what he was talking about. But almost always, Malcolm X, either they never really talked about him or he was violent. Really? And my retort is always, show me where. Can you bring it up? Can you show me where? Where was he violent? I'm curious. And everybody, and again, I say it in a teacher way, though. I'm not trying to be, demure. Oh, can you show me where you found it? They don't know. The next unit, we'll talk about the Black Panthers. What do you know about the Black Panthers? Oh, they were like the Black KKK. Really? Show me where they hated people and lynched people. Show me where they congregated power for themselves, for one race of people. Show me where. My theory is this, y'all. When we talk about police reform and everything, I'm an educator, so I can only speak on that to so much, right? Police reform, police abolitionism, I've heard it all. I see all the perspectives. True change won't happen until America begins to heal. And what I mean by heal is admit was wrong. And you have to start really in the house. You start in the house. You start in the church. But we can't control that. You continue in a school. Every child in America has to go through a school, even if it's a private one. But in America in 2021, they don't even want your kids to learn that racism is a thing. Critical race theory. They don't even know what it's about, but we don't like it. What is it? I don't know, but we don't like it. What's the problem? So what they're saying to you and I is that everything that American students have been learning up until this point is good and is just. My theory as an educator is it is everything that has led to the problems that we have now, or rather the continuation of them. Because if I come from a household where everybody is having, let's say, we talk about like heart disease and high blood pressure and everything, and we were taught growing up that that was something that was genetic. But in reality, it's something that it's habitual. It's passed down. The eating habits are passed down, right? So we have been made to think that only the pill could cure it, but sometimes what it really is the education of how we eat. Because again, I don't have the stats, but I'm just going to say that we probably did not have those same issues in West Africa. High blood pressure, diabetes. I don't think that, I know we weren't perfect, but I'm just saying, why would we have it? So if you begin to learn how to eat differently, you can change the trajectory of your life and your family's history moving forward. So if we begin to change how we digest knowledge, I'm living proof of it myself. When I graduated college, I was 240 pounds. And I'm just like, well, I'm just big boned, I guess. Literally, my wife, she was told by a doctor that you're going to have to take pills because you have a gluten intolerance. A naturopath said, just take this out. 6 months later, doctor said, you good. I don't know what you did, but it worked. So there's something to it, changing the knowledge that we digest. Malcolm said, education is an important element in the struggle for human rights. It is the means to help our children and our people rediscover their identity and thereby increase their self-respect. Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs only to those who prepare for it today. What are we teaching our kids? Because if we're not learning it in school, they're going to learn it from the media. And then the media said, Malcolm said, the media is the most powerful entity on earth. Not America, on earth. They didn't have social media back then, but he kind of knew, right? They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. Do you know that before that footage got out of George Floyd's murder, lynching, they said it was because he overdosed. He resisted. In 2020. They have the power to make the innocent guilty, the guilty innocent. They spent the whole time. What do you need a trial for? But it's protocol. It's protocol. They spent their whole time defending Chauvin. That was their job. Their job was to speak death, not life. They spoke death. He deserved it. He was this. He had a criminal record. He got arrested before. What is a crime in a country founded on criminality and where it's constantly being perpetuated? In Mississippi, I saw a story the other day. This brother has a life sentence, 3-strike law, for marijuana possession. What is a crime in a country where criminality is the foundation? Where a few states to the north, you can be a multi-millionaire. Illinois, selling weed legally. And guess what? Once you get out of prison in most states, if you got that record, you can't even get a legal license. And even if you can, you priced out of it because it's too expensive. What is a crime in America? I'm really confused on how we describe. What's the benchmark? When do we start qualifying things as a crime? Again, was it 1968? That's when we started judging things differently. Because it was a crime to drink from a water fountain. My parents and my grandparents were alive during this time. Rosa Parks, what she did was a crime. Reading a book at one point in time was a crime. Playing the drums in America at one point in time was a crime. So what is a crime? I used to look at it so differently growing up, like, man, why my dudes on my block doing this? Why they selling this? Why they selling that? And I still don't condone it. But when you look at how the drugs were placed there, and my dudes ain't never been off the block, the guns were placed there, you can't even buy them in Chicago. It's a setup. It's a setup, and it's still happening. Critical race theory. They say, and I quote, we don't want our kids to be taught that America is a racist country. What do you want them to be taught? We don't want our kids to be taught that they are oppressors. Nobody said your kids were oppressors. Benefit from it, yeah. If you don't stop that cycle, then yeah. It's something about like when these kids don't, my kids, their best friends are white and black and Hispanic now. They don't have an issue with this. I didn't have an issue with it. My white friends don't have an issue with it. So at one point is the line in the sand drawn. Because I'm starting to think that we missed the memo. Because everybody else figured out that at this age, that's when you start to act white. And at this age, that's when you start to act black. And I mean black, not black. You didn't get the memo. It's being recycled every generation, like Texas, Arizona, Louisiana, Florida, Missouri, right next to us, Idaho, right next to us, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Rhode Island, New Hampshire. These ain't all Confederate states, y'all. They are in the process of banning critical race theory. Oklahoma, it's been 100 years since Black Wall Street. Oklahoma, Idaho, Tennessee already banned it. Meaning that if a school district decides to teach that and somebody reports them, they could lose funds. 11 years ago, Arizona banned the teaching of ethnic studies because they said it taught kids to hate America. If the truth causes me to hate something, maybe you should be concerned more with what was done that caused me to hate it as opposed to me being exposed to that which might make me hateful. Because the problem is, not that I discovered it, the problem is you still want to do it. You mad that I found you mad that I found the map while you still trying to take the riches and the treasure. At one point in time have we come as a people, as a country, as a people, and said we need to repair these things. My theory, y'all, is that black folks have not gotten reparations because America is not done tearing us down. Why would you rebuild something you're destroying? That wouldn't make any sense. I like to break these things down like Malcolm did to the most basic level. When he used metaphors, it allowed him to speak to anybody from Oxford University to the corner of Chicago on 35th and State. We talking metaphors. If I'm tearing down something, I don't want to start to rebuild it. That's unnecessary money. Why? Y'all, I'm teaching about the civil rights movement right now in my class, and I was telling my mom this, that I got emotional because it was my first time teaching about it since what happened last year. Because last year, school year got cut short. I was just passing it, posting it online. I didn't get a chance to teach it in person. And when I showed Emmett Till's video, it was a news story about it. And I just felt the emotion. Like, because when the story was done in 2016, y'all. So they had no idea what was going to happen 4 years later. But the eeriest thing about reading history or reading the Bible is when you see the prophecy being fulfilled. And not just that, but with it being fulfilled, with people not acknowledging that the warnings have always been there. What happened with Emmett Till shouldn't have happened. He was 14. I saw Tamir Rice. I saw Philando Castile. I saw these kids, and then when I explained to my kids the next day that there has never been a law, an anti-lynching law in this country's history, ever passed. Ever. They tried to write one in the 30s. It was actually two white politicians. One of them, I think his name was Edward Costigan. And the so-called most progressive president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, said no, because he needed that white Southern support. The same one who gave us the New Deal, y'all. The same one who gave us minimum wage was also the same one that said y'all can get home loans, but no, not y'all black people. The same one that had the internment camps, the same one that kicked back Mexicans or repatriated them. America is not done, but we have to fix in our mind that we are done accepting it, because they will move how we move. It's like what Ludacris said, when I move, you move. Just like that. Just like that. That's what it is. When Fred Hampton was talking, and he was 19, 20 years old after Malcolm X was assassinated, what he said was true. All power to the people. Like nobody who has power in this country, in any city in America, has power without someone saying, I consent to it. No company has billions of dollars or millions without us saying, I consent by spending my money. You vote with your dollars. You might say, my vote don't matter, but you vote every day. You go to McDonald's, you go to Olive Garden, Chick-fil-A, Whole Foods, whatever, you're voting. You saying, I want you to still be here. It doesn't move until we move. And if we don't move the correct way, the same things are going to continue to happen. And they understand that without history, without us truly learning it, then they can continue to perpetuate it. So here's my thing, y'all. Who we going to call, though? Ghostbusters? That's why we got the Bible. That's why we have each other. That's why we are the church. Not because of the building. Like, this church existed before the building. We are the people. We are the church. Who we going to call if the cops don't defend us? If the teachers mislead us? If the preachers are pimping us? If the judge is sentencing us? And if the stores are poisoning us? And if the politicians are passing laws that exacerbate our situation? Who we going to call? Malcolm said, we assert that in those areas where the government is either unable or unwilling to protect the lives and property of our people, that our people are within our rights to protect themselves by whatever means necessary. I repeat, because to me, this is the most important thing you need to know. I already know it. We assert that in those areas where the government is either unable, he said it twice, or unwilling to protect the lives and property of our people, that our people are within our rights to protect themselves by whatever means necessary. When they beat down Brother Johnson, y'all saw it in the movie, Malcolm went out there with about 4,000 people in the nation. Malcolm wasn't violent, but Malcolm said, this is what you're going to do. And when they looked out the window, they helped Brother Johnson out. Malcolm inspired Huey P. Newton in the Black Panthers. And what did Huey P. Newton do? He didn't have the same technology we have, but he would stay at a safe distance and monitor cops. And when they were doing something wrong, he exposed it. He had a megaphone. He would yell out the law, yell out the codes. Because, again, who we going to call? Do we feel safe in most cities? Who do we go to? But at the same time, we knew growing up that our brother and our sister had our backs. Because if somebody was messing with me, my sister was about to jump. So if we are being taught by those who have been taught to despise us, and policed by those who have been taught to despise us, then we need to start looking inside and say that we got to take control of our communities and ourselves. And in closing, y'all, I want y'all to get these top 3 takeaways from what Malcolm said. For one, speaking truth to power can defeat any lie. But when the truth remains silent, evilness, which is always loud, wins. It's always loud, y'all. They never take a day off. 2, speak like you were made in God's image. That verse was not a mistake. Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. Speak that truth. Speak that conviction. And don't just speak it, act on it. And 3, God speaks through vessels that don't fit your stereotype. They may not look like you. They may not dress like you, may not speak the same language, may not have the same faith. But understand the truth is coming from the spirit realm, the metaphysical. And the impact of the truth will be felt whether we believe it or not.
Membership, God is doing a lot of things in this branch of Zion. Even if you cannot make it here to Stock Village and you're on the World Wide Web, find a church that you can go to. It's good to watch things on the media, on the laptop and on your phone. But it's something about being in the presence of the Spirit of God. The Bible even tells us that we should not forget the fellowship. And so we invite you into the fellowship of Grace Community Church of Christ.
Yes.
If you are watching us on the World Wide Web, you can go to www.grucc.org. There's an e-membership form there.